Hey everybody, final thoughts time for Inventure Quest. But before we begin, please keep in mind this is a paid preview, so take our opinions with a grain of salt. That being said, let's talk about Inventure Quest. And I think, personally, I really enjoyed this game.
Me too.
I think that it is a very light RPG experience. In fact, I would kind of classify it more as a party game.
It feels more party game-y with like a nice, strong RPG
flavor,
framing, twist, however you want to say it.
Yeah, I think as a party game, it works really well. But what's so interesting about this is that it's a party game that you can play two-player.
That is really fun, yeah.
Which you never see. And so we had this experience, just a two-player experience, and it was a great little story that we developed. But you can play this, 3-4 players. You can play it 5-6 players. Theoretically, you could play it more than that, though I think there's only so many of the vote cards.
What I will say is a lot of party games is sort of this, it's a more nebulous genre than some other types of like game genres. And I'd say like party games, it generally seems like the sweet spot of like number of people you want to play is relatively high.
Yes.
This one, it feels like the sweet spot, or like when things really start humming, is probably around like 4.
Yeah, I'd say
really
4,
cool.
which makes sense because a lot of times when you're playing an RPG, you want somewhere between 3 and 5 players.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that ties into it really well. One of the things that I really like about this is that I think it is a great like entry-level RPG experience. If you have a person who's never played RPGs, then I think this is a great way to introduce them to the idea of storytelling in gaming, and especially collaborative storytelling. So like we have these cards in front of us, and they do tell you like what they are, but they leave plenty of room for interpretation. So for the people that really want to stretch their creative muscles, they have that. But for people who aren't as confident, they have very much these handholds that they can use.
Yeah, I like that because there's sometimes that it can be a little overwhelming sometimes if the game is like, think just what I'm thinking, like come on, let's group think and then we win.
Yeah.
But there are some like subtle things that I really like about how this game is designed, that you can sort of lean on the gaminess of it and not the like nebulous, let's make a story groupthink part of it.
Yeah.
If maybe your group isn't as conversational, if you don't want to have this huge imaginative journey together, there is like the game part of it, because I like in the like revealing of what the actual answer was, how it encourages you to tie it into an aspect that your character has. So there is a part of it that it's not just can I read your mind, there's a part of like, let me logic out like what this character would likely do given these options. Yeah. And that lets it be a little less of like, oh, I hope that I got this answer right, and a little more you can game it. Not like too much, because it's still a party game in my opinion. Yeah. But enough that like you aren't going to be lost and upset if you aren't telepathic.
Sure, but it does reward you for like getting into the other player's minds. Yeah. But it's not so heavy on that, I think is what you're saying. Yeah. So to that end, I think that this is going to be a great game for families, especially parents who like RPGs and want to get their kids into that idea of like storytelling in a game with some kind of like structure. The structure is very light, but as with plenty of RPGs, you do have to work within a set of rules. So I think this is a really good introduction to that kind of gaming experience. And
you were saying before we turn on this camera that it doesn't just have to be this sort of like standard medieval fantasy RPG style or flavor. It can be
So we used the characters that they provided with us. They provided a few options, but I think the game when it comes out is going to have like 15, 20, something like a lot of pre-made characters for you, which I think is going to be really, really important for people. But it also provides blank character sheets, and you can make whatever character you want. You can also set this in whatever setting you want. So we did fantasy because that was what how the characters matched up. But you could also set it in a modern world. You could set it in a science fiction, very like high fantasy world. You could pick an IP. You can do it in Star Wars, or you can do it in My Little Pony if you want. You can match it to whatever the interests are of the players. And so I think that's going to be especially useful for getting people interested, especially getting children interested in a game like this. And
and that works so well with the game because the flavor of the game really happens with the characters and with like the setup, but everything else, like these objects and action cards, they're so generic enough that you can play them in whatever setting you want. So if you want to do, you know, Back to the Future and you look at these icons, it's not like all of a sudden they're invalid. They help you tell a different story in a different way.
Anything, and because these cards have so many different options, even just written on. Yes, there's a magical interpretation, but you could also have a scientific interpretation of things, or just a mundane interpretation. It's very interpretive, and I think that is to its strength because it lets you tell any kind of story that you want to tell. Now, the rules and the mechanics of it, as you could see in the run through, are very light. So this is not the most deep, you know, RPG experience that you're going to find, but as with a lot of RPGs and a lot of party games, I think that you're really going to get out of it what you put into it. One of the reasons that I have enjoyed playing this so much is because Nick and I play a fair amount of RPGs together, and we have a kind of rapport in that sense. And so we're
working on it. It's building. It's building. It's been like what, 10 years?
Something like that, yeah. So, but because of that, we have a good back and forth, and this just allows us to be kind of creative at each other.
Yeah.
So
which we like.
Yeah. So if you, I think the people that are going to get the most out of this are the people who really can buy into letting themselves be creative in these ways, and letting themselves come up with ideas and work them across against the people that they're playing with, because that I think was the most interesting part of it, was just what could we come up with.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it for that sense. So if you are looking for a light RPG style party game, or just an entry level RPG experience that I think works great for kids and families, then I think you should check out Inventure Quest. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye now.